Welcome to Prime Suspects for your weekly insider's look behind the counter of Prime Sports. Alongside Joe Brennan Jr. and Adam Bjorn, I'm your host, Matt Landis. This week's topics include Week 1 of the NFL season and how Prime fared, Bet365 opening eyes in Kentucky, and a look at the future of ESPN BET after the app didn't launch in New York before the football season kicked off. Guys, starting with the latest from Inside Prime Sports, NFL Week 1 results now in the books. Joe, we'll kick it off with you. I know a couple of the biggest decisions came in primetime. Friday night needed the Packers to cover against your Eagles for the balls, to quote some correspondence I saw from you. I had a similar need, and we know how that worked out. And then on Sunday night, Prime needing the Rams, 3 times the money and 2 times the tickets on the Lions in that one. The Rams as a heavy underdog play to a draw through 60 minutes, only for the cover to go up in flames in overtime. So to quote Ryan Gosling from Remember the Titans, I don't even have to ask, but I will. What did you think of Week 1?
Hey, come on, Week 2. It was fine. I mean, we ended on an up note last night with the San Francisco game. We had needed, oddly enough, we were in the public position. We needed San Francisco and the over, which we got. So great. Some of the other nights, I mean, between the Thursday night game, it's funny how the season started off the same way it ended for us last year. Last year we went from 1 minute, it was getting the best possible result, which would have been San Francisco in the under, and then Super Bowl goes overtime and you get KC in the over, which absolutely wiped us out, to the first game of the season. Yeah, that was a tough swing. And then the Eagles game. Yeah, it is what it is. College football Saturday. I was surprised by that, especially since we didn't benefit from the Notre Dame upset as much as I thought we might have. But then rolling into Sunday, we did really good the first part of the day, less good in the afternoon, and then the PM game just really kind of wrecked us. So coming back and finishing with some strength last night, I think was good. It also showed where if you looked at, because obviously there was some comments in social media. God knows I was being a social media hoe over the weekend, trying to get where we stood on the games out there. The number of times that Prime was diverging from the marketplace. What it shows is like, hey, look, players, if you're looking for something different, there is something different out there. It's called Prime. And I just think like last night where we were at, everybody else on the planet needed the Jets and the under, and we're on the other side of that, needing San Fran and the over. But anyway, all in all, it was kind of a middling start to the season, and I'll be very happy for us to roll into Week 2.
Adam, building on Joe's point about what the book needed last night, with most of the space needing the Jets and the under and Prime needing the Niners and the over, how much of that is just the way it happened to work out for Prime, and how much of that was intentional, trying to take a stand to wrap up the Week 1 slate?
That's just lack of customers. Again, the less customers there is, the decisions are going to be different to most other places, especially when, again, the customers that we have are assassins and, more likely to be on dug and under than the recreational bettors, which are favorite and over, which put everyone else on the other side. That's going to be normal throughout the process. The idea is it evens out and works out in our favor over the long term. And again, ultimately, it's adding more liquidity and more customers to be able to be kind of like the rest of the world, but not be like the rest of the world kind of thing. It's just sort of, you take the bets and then you ride the wave. That's pretty much how it works. Forget about the football. Again, first number I looked at Monday morning was the golf. Yes, golf was green in New Jersey. So it means, again, we beat Sport Trade on the ARBs. But some actual really interesting things come up based on the weekend. And it's been a recurring pattern. We are crushing New Jersey and we are getting crushed in Ohio. It showed up on the football as well. In New Jersey, we held about 12% on a lot bigger volume than Ohio, but in Ohio, we lost like 25% on the hold. And this has been consistent. Again, Saturday was a good day, 6-figure win New Jersey, lost in Ohio. Sunday, again, was a good day. Some of the big results, Chicago ended up being probably one of the best results with how that fell. A lot of hard work to get there, but got there. And then Miami coming back and at least winning the game. While they didn't cover, that one hurt, but there was a fair bit on the Jags money line. So again, it's just what the positions there are when the game starts. Doesn't mean they are at the end of the game, because with live betting these days, that can just change throughout the whole game. But yeah, volume was decent. Results were good. Again, I mean, all this stuff's made public, so it's not like we can tell any fairy tales here. But you'll see a nice big green number, I imagine, in New Jersey, and not so much in Ohio. But overall, it was a winning weekend.
And an interesting nugget along the lines of those divergent results between New Jersey and Ohio for one of the early games on Sunday. Ohio, top need for prime was the Panthers at the Saints. In New Jersey, same game, the top need was the Saints hosting the Panthers. So a tale of two states, if you will. How does that kind of dynamic affect your approach to risk management?
It's the same book, it's the same company, it's the same everything. Who cares? That's where I think a lot of the others get sort of confused about trying to balance states. And if you're in New Jersey and Ohio and the Browns and the Jets are playing stuff, like, who cares? Just put up the same number in both states. You'll bet and you'll get action either side, and you'll move it back and forth. And then ultimately, if you're allowing every customer to play, the smart guys will knock it back into place if you're getting overloaded on the recreational side, which we sure as hell aren't. But that's sort of just, where I think all the other operators miss out on just natural happenings. Again, you get heavy on one side, you move it, you see someone come in that knows what they're doing, and you just, jump on their side and let the other side kind of run.
One more follow-up question on this topic. Either of you feel free to jump in here, but when it comes to the discrepancy between results in New Jersey and Ohio, how much of that may be early season noise, and how much of it may you chalk up to some degree of signal looking at the different clientele in the two different states?
So while I don't have the answers, I believe arbitrage is probably where it's at. Again, as I've said many times, there is not a single operator in New Jersey that I wouldn't want to be on the other side of any arbitrage. I'm wondering if it's, those doing the good work for us and, just taking a bit of DraftKings and Caesars and Sport Trade money and shipping it over to our coffers. But the Ohio players definitely, they're pros, and we're dealing with pros in that state right now. But don't know the answer. I do have customers be able to check notes and sort of see what they're named as. But I imagine that's what it could be. And then we also do have a decent sized bettor in New Jersey that had a rough weekend. And that would be a bit of a differentiator as well. But again, early days, we're just going through the motions of taking bets, grading games, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, it's just a small sample size right now, Matt. I mean, obviously the guys who set up shop there in Ohio, we know them from last year. They did solid last year as well, but we won against them overall. So look, I mean, 1 week of NFL, couple of weeks of college. College has been, colleges as it is always early season. We've got a lot of guys who are trying to plow a lot of money into overwhelming money line favorites, Alabama versus Birmingham Teachers College, those kind of things. It kind of distorts things a little bit. That'll all even out as we move out of month one and start to move into the body of the season.
All right. Well, from some interesting results across Prime's first two states to a different book turning heads in a soon-to-be Prime state, our water cooler segment this week, Kentucky July results are in, and in the first full month in the state for Bet365, their revenue exceeded BetMGM, Caesars, and ESPN Bet combined. A big surprise to some is Bet365 not widely considered a tier 1 US operator, but globally, they are much more of a powerhouse. So Adam, given your experience on both sides of the counter and all over the world, I'm guessing this wasn't as much of a surprise to you as it probably was to a lot of others. What's your point of view on Bet365's quite strong Kentucky numbers?
Yeah, zero surprise here. We've been saying it internally for a long time. They were taking their time. They're in no rush. They don't care about this, race to the bottom that all the others are in. They're picking their states that they want. They're starting to expand a lot quicker now. They haven't really thrown that much advertising money into it, which has kind of got them to rule the world everywhere else. They'll be there. They'll be there at the end of the day. They'll be right up the top among the others. Definitely a Caesars and MGM again. They're going back to being casinos, not sports books. So I imagine you'll see Bet365, once they really stretch their legs, and maybe they're 5 years away from doing that, we'll be up there battling with the best of them in probably a big three, if not clearly the third when it comes to it. Yeah, so no surprise that they're starting to see there. We saw in Ohio that they were, moving up there pretty quickly. Again, they were laying some advertising. They'd done a deal there. But yeah, zero shock here.
Joe, what do you make of Bet365 seemingly coming out of nowhere to make such a big splash in its opening month in Kentucky?
Well, we know they didn't come out of nowhere. Even though they aren't putting on a big push, their brand is pretty well known, particularly amongst real bettors here globally. Again, it just makes sense the way that they've entered the United States versus some of the folks who are now sitting, we've all struck their names off of our sportsbook dead pools. So the Unibets, the Betfreds of the world who came in, they crashed into the United States, overspent, went crazy, thought they were going to get a big pop. And in the end, now they're heading back home with a gigantic American-sized welt on their ass. Bet365 is smart. They run a global operation, and they're taking a walk, don't run approach into the United States. They're testing the waters from a regulatory sense because there's, I've known some of the people over there, and there's always a famous joke that like when Bet365 used to fly into America, they had to have lawyers get off the plane first, just in case there was going to be any trouble. But they seem to be getting more and more comfortable with the regulatory environment here in the United States. The United States is definitely, I think, needs a counterweight to Fan Kings out there in the front, somebody that's going to keep the market honest. Nothing but respect for those guys. And I think as now they're kind of gotten used to the temperature of the waters over here, you're probably going to see them start to lengthen out here a little bit more, particularly now that there's a lot of downward pressure being exerted on the Fan Kings guys by their public markets investors where, they want to see more profitability. And we've already seen it on our side of the ball where, everything from affiliate compensation, ad deals, things like that, those are starting to come free. There's not as many dollars in the market as there were in previous seasons from those guys. So that's a great time for Bet365 if they had the wherewithal to come in and start snapping up stuff, start snapping up ad buys and getting more attention from the affiliate networks and others. And in the meantime, product-wise, look, they're a solid product. They're as solid as they come. So I would say right now, all these people who think that Fan Kings are out there in front and unassailable, they just have not been watching the waters. Those guys are a great white shark. Bet365 just waiting to come in and snack on the guys up front.
Moving from one book's approach, Joe, to use your phrase, walk, don't run, to another book that arguably hasn't even started to crawl yet in a major market. Our look ahead segment this week, using the jumping off point of a title of an article by Patrick Redford, published yesterday on Defector. Penn's ESPN bet scheme looks increasingly grim. This is largely based on not launching the app in New York in time for week 1 of the NFL season, despite Penn CEO Jay Snowden declaring in the most recent earnings call that it would be live by the end of August. Joe, you've previously cautioned against piling on ESPN bet, as fashionable as that may be across much of the industry right now. But this seems like a big miss. So how much of this do you chalk up as an aberration? And how much do you chalk it up as perhaps part of a broader pattern emerging for the future of the product and the brand?
It's an aberration. I mean, Adam and I have been in this position where we say like, oh, we're going to be launching on this date. And then we don't make that date. Oh, well, we're going to be launching on this date. And then we don't make that date. This is not easy. Okay. Getting your spot, even for an experienced company like Penn National, like take the ESPN label off for a moment. This is Penn National launching into a fairly difficult market there in New York. Now, whether Jay was aware of where they were in the regulatory process and the testing process for their app, I don't know. I knew his predecessor, Tim Wilmot, pretty level-headed guy, more experienced guy, more conservative guy when it came to Penn and how they expanded their business. Jay seems to be far more aggressive, far more responsive to public markets, far more into like the media angle of this. And so he's built this nest for him right now with all these expectations by tying up with ESPN. Again, the sample sizes are way too small. And, nobody was going to get their name notice on defector.com by coming in and saying like, well, guys, these are just the growing pains of an online betting operation, early days. They're only going to come in by giving the most dire predictions. Oh, the sky is falling. Again, these guys, they based on the terms of the deal and everything like that, they really haven't even begun to start clearing their throat. ESPN itself, depending on their level of commitment to this deal and how much they integrate it into their content, things like that, there's more of a determinant on how much success is going to be rather than they miss their target date for opening up in New York. It might help if ESPN's betting expert, Erin Kate Dolan, could, next time she gives picks out during one of her segments on ESPN, that, what was it, something like 7 of the 10 picks weren't even available on ESPN Bet. I mean, they got to get their shit together there. I think there's more there to talk about as far as execution on the content side. As far as missing their date in New York, again, overreaction.
Well, as far as the execution on the content side goes, digging a bit further to a look ahead to the future of the operator, how do you foresee that changing, if at all, to maybe offset some of the challenges they've had on the more technical, logistical side from just getting live in a market like New York?
ESPN is in decline, relatively speaking, because of the way the market has come compared to where they were 20, 30 years ago. They did sign Jason Kelce. Congratulations, guys. But they've had problems with executing on multiple strategies, even before betting, in the face of fragmentation in media, moving from cable boxes into the digital space on the smartphones, things like that. ESPN is not flawless. Having said that, it is an incredibly powerful brand that's in virtually every home in the United States and will be on every phone. They're on virtually everybody's phone anyway right now. Almost everybody has the ESPN app. So that doesn't necessarily guarantee success, but it does say that they have to improve their part of the game. And Penn is an operator, okay? I don't expect Jason Oden and Penn to perfect on how to sell the ESPN Bet brand. That really should be coming from the mothership of sports. They have so many assets that if this thing does fail, you can sit here and you can throw rocks at Jason Oden and Penn, but I'd throw just as many, if not more, at ESPN and at Bristol, Connecticut, because this could wind up being yet another attempt by them over like the last couple of decades to diversify, and that they just don't execute on it well. I don't know if it's, some sort of like inherent overconfidence that they have in their brand, that all they got to do is stamp ESPN on something and it's going to be successful. But we've seen time again in the past, everything from the sports bars to the sports ticker, the mobile phone, things like that, where ESPN entered a new segment where they should do well, and they've crapped out on execution.
Adam, at this point, happy to bring you into the fold for thoughts on anything from Penn's operation to ESPN's content. To tee you up, I will note that I would assume, based on my understanding of your firsthand experience in recent years, that perhaps your empathy has increased when it comes to the technical and logistical challenges of hitting a big but arbitrary date on a calendar to go live in a market. So with that considered, how would you describe your point of view on ESPN Bet missing the New York app launch prior to football season kicking off, and how that may or may not tie in with your own thoughts about the operator's future?
Well, a 51% tax rate is probably a good weekend not to be live in New York, with how the results seemingly fell for some books. So, a CEO at a earnings call calling out stuff that's a tech item that, now that I know what tech's like, yeah, for me, it's a nothing thing. Obviously, the whole ESPN Bet is somewhat floundering, technology-wise, branding-wise, content-wise, all those kind of things. They had their big spike when they rebranded it through promotions and literally just giving away money for people to buy in and give it a go. But for what the brand is and what they are, they're really struggling. But I don't see them going anywhere. They should be able to pick it up. I think it's, again, who's probably got the keys driving the bus may not just, know how to differentiate themselves or make themselves a more competitive product or reaching the end user. Without getting the keys for a week and having a look myself, there's not a lot that you can sort of dive into of seeing what they're doing wrong or if there's anything they're doing right of that nature. But yeah, a nothing story for me for the most part.
God, Adam just suggested something that I think would be absolutely friggin' amazing. Like a combination of like Hell's Kitchen and Undercover Boss, for Adam to go into these operations, look under the hood on camera, great, and find out what it is that's ailing them and how they could turn their operation around. I would absolutely watch that over and over again.
That sounds like it may be quite compelling to some, but guys, before we potentially get any further off the rails here, we'll go ahead and tie a bow around this week's conversation. To the audience, we'd be remiss not to mention all eyes tomorrow going to be on the Massachusetts Gaming Commission, apparently with operators showing up this time to discuss the practice of limiting players. We don't give out many, if any, bets on this show to date, but one we'll give out today, a best bet. We will definitely cover that in detail in our next episode. In the meantime, thanks for making us a part of your week, and we'll catch you next week right back here on Prime Suspects. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Prime Suspects. Register for Prime Sports at primesports.com and download the Prime Sports app. You can follow us on Twitter at Prime Sportsbook, at Joe Brennan Jr., and at Adam Bjorn 2. You must be 21 or over to play on Prime Sports. Always bet responsibly and within your limits. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.